I'd like to thank Birch Living for sponsoring this video. Are you afraid of starting a big project? Are you worried that you don't know all the tricks? Are you concerned about an old, unfinished project? I am just finishing an 8-year project, my new Hexagon Millefiori. And boy, did it teach me a lot about fabric, color, and a whole lot more. And I'm going to share that with you as I sew the final stitches. So stick with me and I'll show you how to do it. Hi, I'm Karen Brown of Just Get It Done Quilts. I give you tips, tricks, and strategies to help you make the quilt that you want to make. And if you like what you see, please click that subscribe button. I am in the home stretch of a huge English paper piecing project. It has seen the best of times and it has seen the worst of times. And now I get to share it all with you. I made my first pieces for this quilt on March 11th, 2017. I know this because I posted the picture on Instagram. Now that might have been when I made my first hexagon pieces, but I realize now that the start day was about a year before that, when I first saw the pattern by Katya Marek, and my whole body just sizzled. Those symmetries and colors just sucked me in, and I couldn't buy her book fast enough. Even though it would take a year before I was brave enough to cut the fabric, it was just not one decision and done, and then you start. I spent a year learning from other quilters who had already started the quilt. I took a workshop with Katya and gathered in all the necessary tools and supplies to start my first English paper piecing project. I don't think we as quilters give this stage the importance that it deserves. Making a quilt is a marathon. This pre-making phase is the first step in the journey. We're not fiddling or goofing off or procrastinating. We are loading our brains with crucial information, such as what colors are we going to use? What can we use from our stash? How are we going to organize the project? And many other necessary decisions so that we can stay the course and get to the finish line. So don't be ashamed that it takes you a couple of years before you cut. Pre-cutting is really important. If you know how to use a graphics program on your computer, it's relatively easy for you to make your own EPP shapes. It's also fairly easy to take cardstock, the finished block size, and mark and cut the shapes. But when you're making a slow sewing project of this size, you might need to choose your battles. Slow sewing, though it appears to be a quiet, idyllic process, it actually can be quite taxing on your hands. And you can only do so much before your hands need a break. Adding the extra step of cutting the papers can be a bridge too far. You might be able to pass this task on to another family member or friend, or purchase them pre-made. I found some vendors on Amazon for some of the common shapes, but they can't beat paperpiecing.com for the variety of kits or the depth of their line. You can also consider purchasing them secondhand if you're prepared to watch the marketplace and wait. Personally, I've done all three, and you know that I love the cutting stage. So you might be surprised that now, when I tackle these big English paper piecing projects, I conserve my hands for sewing and I buy the papers. It's just a much better use of my time. When I studied crystallography in university, who knew many years later that I would apply it to my quilting? There are many different types of symmetry, and in the Millefiori style of quilts, there are two main types that make them sing. The first is rotational symmetry. That is when you take a motif and then you rotate it around a center point. In the center motif is particularly fun as it often changes the personality of the print. But it's also in play for an entire wedge of the rosette as well. This wedge is identical to this wedge as it rotates around the center. The second type of symmetry that you can take advantage of is mirror symmetry. This is when a shape is reflected over a center line. For this, you need a fabric with a motif and its opposite. William Morris and Tula Pink are two designers that use this type of symmetry often in their prints. You can also find fabrics where the opposite motif exists, but not side by side. And don't forget that you can use this with geometric shapes too. And lastly, motifs don't need to be centered to have an effect. This piece here was taken from a squirrel's tail. Here, all the telephone boxes are on a slant, giving a cool pinwheel effect. With summer months upon us, we will be spending more time with my parents in the country. And after many years, I thought it was time to put a Birch Living mattress on the bed. Birch Living is a mattress in a box company that makes mattresses that are fiberglass free and crafted with sustainably sourced organic and natural materials. It comes rolled up in a box and is straightforward to set up yourself. The mattress has over 1,000 individually wrapped steel coils to cradle your body and limit motion transfer. Their non-toxic mattresses are made right here in North America, crafted with 8 different layers of organic cashmere, organic wool, organic cotton, and 100% natural latex. This is important to me because those organic materials help keep me cool and regulate my body temperature while I sleep. And my mattress is not releasing any dangerous emissions into the air, as it's guaranteed free of harmful chemicals. Birch mattresses are Green Guard Gold certified. This means the mattresses are independently verified to be organic, ethically produced from beginning to end, and free from any polyurethane-based foams and harsh, unnecessary chemicals and pollutants. Ordering online can be nerve-wracking. With Birch, you get a 100-night sleep trial, plus a 25-year warranty. Delivery to your door is free within the USA. With every order, you'll also receive 2 Birch Eco-Rest pillows made from recycled bottles. They're breathable and better for the environment. I love my Birch mattress, and I think that you will too. If you're looking for a new bed, check out Birch Living. Their 4th of July sale is live now, so it's the perfect time to upgrade your sleep with 25% off a Birch mattress plus 2 free Eco-Rest pillows. Visit birchliving.com/quilts to find out more about this limited time offer. When I started this quilt, I made a decision to follow the original pattern design. That is, where there was a stripe, I would use a stripe. Where there was a flower, I would use something circular. And if it used mirror symmetry, I would try and do the same. And this was the primary factor I looked for when choosing my fabrics. Unfortunately, it made for a number of rosettes that were underwhelming, because I soon learned that you should always start with value, which is simply how light or dark your colors are. Yes, my colors coordinated and worked together, and I did some clever things with fussy cutting. But you can see by this black and white photo that I have several areas where everything just blends together. This original rosette was one of the worst offenders. I was so worried about everything color matching that I did not try grabbing colors from other parts of the color wheel, like some with much higher values and some with very low values, to give me the contrast I needed. Compounding the problem, I used a palette of reds and greens, 2 colors that have similar value. So it's kind of dull. So now I always start with value and go from there. If you're unsure what value is, take a look at my color theory playlist, where I explain value, saturation, hue, and color harmony. So I quickly learned to look for fabrics with high and low value to give me contrast. But it also took me a couple of rosettes to realize that a fabric's value can change depending on how you cut it. Here's one example. I thought this green was a good mid-value fabric, but I chose to cut it to align with the strip in the middle. And look at how much lighter it became. So now, when I'm choosing fabrics, I always cut a template of the size that I need and test various spots of the fabric with it. By blocking out the rest of the design, I can truly see how light or dark the fabric is and use it accordingly. You need to choose the right tool for the job. And then you might be thinking, well, what tools do you need? There's only threaded needles. Well, let's start with the thread. When I started hand piecing, I would start with the longest thread I could pull. And the result was messy knots, my thread catching on everything, and regular fraying and breaking. Talk about frustrating. I tried shorter threads, 1 arm's length, or less to solve the problem. But then I had to stop and rethread my needle all the time. So I started threading 4 to 5 needles at once, so I could keep my momentum going. I still had an issue with the stitches visible on the front, so I started using Invisifill by Wonderfill. It's a 100-weight polyester. I use it doubled and with a quilter's knot. Then I was at a quilting show and saw a demo of a person using an applique number 10 with a big eye. So I tried them out, and now I love how my stitches look on the front. I also found that after an evening of hand sewing, my hands, arms, and shoulders would ache. I do have a tendency to clench as if my life depended on it. So I have found magnets that can hold your pieces in place so your hands can take a break. And it took me a while, but I finally made myself this pillow so that my arm can rest comfortably on it, which means my shoulders can rest. I still need to be vigilant for my death grip, but now it's much easier on my body. I am pretty sure that I purchased 4 times the amount of fabric I needed for this quilt. I would often be in a store and think, well, that's a clever print. I think I could use that. Only to bring it home and find the motifs were too big or not big enough, or too busy or not busy enough. Then I would start digging through my stash and find that I already had some good choices. For several of the rosettes, I made a no-buy pact and forced myself to use what I had. Though I did break that rule for my last rosette. While on a shop hop in Montreal with the Beaconsfield Quilters Guild, I found some fabric that really inspired me. And it worked really well, probably the best rosette in the whole quilt, but I shopped for my stash for the few last hexagons. When we fussy cut our fabrics, the leftovers end up looking like Swiss cheese. Don't despair, there are many things that you can use these scraps for. You could fussy cut other motifs in the fabric to use in other rosettes. You can splice some motifs together, like I showed you in this video here. No one will ever know. You can use them in bonus blocks, like I showed you in this video. And you can paper piece them to adding machine tape, like I showed you in this one. I'll be honest, because of the odd shapes, even if you use one or all of these options, you will find there's still a higher wastage with fussy cutting, which drives me a bit mad. The trick is to recognize what you can use and what you can't as soon as possible, so it doesn't add clutter to your space. I had so much fun seeing how my fabrics work in the different shapes and patterns, but there came a point where I could not get the results I wanted with the fabrics I had. And if buying more fabric was off the table, I had no choice but to change the block. It was funny when I first did this how I agonized over it for weeks. I mean, what if Katya found out? When I finally made up my mind which of the other blocks would work better, the relief was incredible, and it gave me the confidence to change the layout when I fell in love with some fabric so much that I wanted to make a bigger rosette, which of course affects the block beside it. By the time I made it to the last row, I think I changed over 7 rosettes. And I realized that I had made a half a block too much, and I wasn't going to cut that off. So I just made the rosettes along the bottom with an extra half block. Knowing what I know now, it was really hard to finish this project. My brain wanted to rip out those less than stellar results and replace them with new ones. But then I realized, when would that end? And if you hate ripping stitches out, trust me, ripping out hand-sewn stitches at 16 stitches per inch is even harder. It finally took coming to terms with my younger self and accepting it is what it is before I could muster up the energy to finish that last rosette. I made it for my future grandchildren to cuddle up under and explore all the prints, from telephones to bees to tools to mermaids to tricky mathematical equations. Will they notice if I gave my frogs a halo or explain why raccoons are wearing scarves? I can only hope so. I also had to accept that this quilt was not going to be completed for this video. It has taken much longer than anticipated to remove the papers and prepare the quilt top. I also wanted to take the time for custom quilting in all the wonderful shapes. So the reveal will have to wait until I return from my cruise in July. So if you have any questions about this project, be sure to put them in the comments below, and I'll answer them then. Katja Mark no longer has this free pattern on her website, but it is on the paperpieces.com website. So if you want to make one of your own, I'll leave a link of that in the notes below. And if you are interested in any of the videos I referenced, I'll make a playlist right here. Take care, and I'll see you next time.